And we are live. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to a very special episode of the Bookish Hour. We are here for an hour of conversation and fun, but also to learn a lot. We've got a great panel for you this evening. And so welcome, everyone, to the Bookish Hour. I'm your host, Sarah Burr.
And I am your other host, JC Kenny. Happy Wine Wednesday. Congratulate yourself, folks. You made it over halfway through the week. And yes, Sarah, this panel we have three amazing authors, three super different series to talk about. And like Sarah said, it's relevant to today. And I'm going to stop babbling. And because, Sarah, I think it's time to get bookish.
I agree on the getting bookish part. It's always fun when you babble. Yes. And as JC said, we have a very, very esteemed panel with us this evening. We are talking about thrillers and the relevance of now. So we have three wonderful authors who are joining us this evening here to chat about how their thrillers use technology, modern, machinations of how, guns and poisons and explosions and all of these things work and how the government operates and all of these really interesting topics that we're going to dive into today. We are joined by S. Lee Manning. If you would like, Sandy, give us a wave. There we are. We have BJ Magnani joining us.
Yeah, baby.
And folks who tuned in last week will probably remember my conversation with Matt Cost on his Max Creed series. Matt was the driving force of bringing together these three creative minds. So without further ado, Matt, by way of introduction, can you just share a little bit about your writing journey and what brought you to writing about Max Creed and the thrill ride that his adventures are for readers?
I started off writing historical fiction and actually had written my first historical fiction in 1991. And then 29 short years later, it got published. But about that time, I realized that I was more into mysteries and started writing a lot of mysteries. So since then, I wrote 14 more mysteries. And then I said, let's evolve this into something a little bit more. And, as the world turns these days, there's a lot of things in the news that, force me to write about thrillers and trying to stop, some of the excesses in the world.
That certainly lots of inspiration to be had. Dr. M, what got you into writing about poisons and the world of toxicology, which I just find to be so fascinating?
Well, I actually came about this in a very funny way because in 2008, I was asked by the editor-in-chief of the journal Clinical Chemistry, which is an international journal for clinical chemists and toxicologists, to write a fictional series for this scientific journal that would be able to entertain and teach toxicology at the same time. So every month I would write a short story about a character I created, Dr. Lily Robinson. She would knock off some bad guy using a poison. I wouldn't say what, and I wouldn't say exactly how. And you, as the reader, then had to write into the journal, say how she did it and what she used, given all the clues that I did. And then in the next issue, the journal editors would pick out from the correct answers. This is a worldwide journal. And then that person would win a something for the bookstore, a little credit for the bookstore. And I would write a tutorial then in the name of Lily Robinson on what I did and how I did it, and then gave you a little chemistry tutorial on the poison itself. And I wrote under the pen name of Lily Robinson for over a year, people not knowing who the person was who was writing this thing in the journal. It was kind of fun.
That
That has
is
got to
the
be the
greatest intro story. I think Sarah and I have been doing this for like 6 years. We have talked to literally hundreds of wonderful folks. And Dr. M, I think I got to give you the #1 slot there for the greatest backstory. That's amazing.
that is beyond. I love the idea of this like interactive storytelling. Holy moly, that's really cool. So how did you take Lily from this journal and like the teaching world into writing these amazing thrillers?
Well, after it was revealed that who was writing as Dr. Lily Robinson, which was at a huge convention of clinical chemists actually out in Los Angeles, people guessed because I also, like Lily Robinson, wore stilettos at work. But many of the people who read it said, we love the stories, but the science is a little heavy for us. We don't really know all those chemical formulas. So any way you could write this as just straight fiction with a little chemistry thrown in. And that's how I started actually writing a short story collection, which is out there, as well as the novels. So it still has science, but it's made for the layperson.
It is most certain. Although there were a couple times while I was reading that the oh gosh, it was something that began with meth, and it had like every letter in the alphabet and then some in it. I was like,
Oh,
there is no way that I'm going to be able to pronounce that, but I'm pretty sure you could. And then, of course, we have rounding out our wonderful panel for the evening is S. Lee Manning, who we are going to be calling Sandy this evening.
Yep.
Sandy, can you share how you came up with like the most suave, cool, collected super spy that I've come across?
Well, it's a kind of long story, but first I wanted to go into why I write under S. Lee as opposed to Sandy, which goes back to I write spy stories because I love spies. I love stories about spies. They've been cool. I've thought they were the coolest thing since I was about 13 years old and watched Man from Uncle. But I was talking to an editor when I did the first draft of Trojan Horse, which is the first book in the series. And she said, oh, well, men aren't going to read a spy series written by a woman. So I thought, well, I have to change my name. Hence S. Lee, and the Lee is actually my middle name. And one of my friends said, why don't you just do Lee Manning? So I said, okay, I'll Google. This is later.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I'll Google Lee Manning and see. And I found out there was a Lee Manning already writing out there. And he had a couple books on anal sex that I said, I think I'll go stay with S. Lee. So how I created Kolya. Kolya was a long way in development. The first draft of Trojan Horse I finished in 2006, and it was 850 pages long, which I think even back in 2006 was a wee bit long. I cut it in half, cut it some more, won a contest with Mystery Writers of America to have your first 50 pages read by an agent, got an agent, never sold it, went into a drawer, and then 15 years later, I took it out. And what had happened in those years, the basic story remained the same, but Kolya's identity changed, and a little bit, which is that what had happened since then was the March in Charlotte with the tiki torches and people chanting, Jews shall not replace us. And I had Kolya's a Russian Jewish immigrant to the US, and it was not, being Jewish was not a big deal in the first, and then I made the anti-Semitism became one of the minor themes of some of the books. The anti-Semitism of, he goes up against the far-right figures in Romania, in Germany, and even in the United States. And there's in the last book, it's with a group that thinks that lizards actually control the government. So, which
Oh.
I think might be preferable to at this point. So he just so he just evolved.
Mm-hmm.
And so, speaking of evolving, we've had a little bit of an introduction to Lily and to Kolya. Matt, I apologize for not being able to be with y'all last week. So I kind of missed, an introduction into Max Creed. Can you tell us a little bit about Max and what's he doing in the thriller world?
Max Creed is an interesting character. He's a modern day Robin Hood, if you will. Um, but his backstory, Jim, is pretty difficult because his backstory is he lived in Maine, and on his wedding day, um, an assassin killed his bride of 2 seconds. So
Yikes.
they just said, I do. His bride was killed. And it turned out that this um, multi-billionaire that he'd built a case against to, for selling heroin on the side on top of his pharmaceutical business, had hired this assassin to kill his bride to, get even with him. So Max Creed kind of goes into a spiral and he hunts down the assassin and kills him. And then he finds then he starts tearing apart the world of the ultra wealthy pharmaceutical heroin dealing person and tears down his life piece by piece, reveals things about him to his wife, his kids. They turn his back on as his friends leave him. And he then abducts the man and makes a deal with him that he won't kill him if he turns over $1 billion in his offshore accounts. And he takes the $1 billion, then he addles the brain of this ultra wealthy businessman on the very heroin that he was dealing to people and checks them into an insane asylum in Uzbekistan. And so that is where that ultra wealthy person still resides. And we start off with Max Creed, who that's not his name yet. His name is Milo. But we start off with Max Creed now, drunk in a bar in Dhaka, kind of falling apart, despair, depressed, and he's going to run into John Little, who is going to pull him out of this depression. So you're catching on to the names already of this modern day Robin Hood story. John Little, and we're going to add a few more people like Scarlett and Skads Miller and Tucker Friedman and people like that to the ensemble of not so merry people of Max Creed. So that's his
What
backstory. And then we kind of, now we're off and running into book one, chapter one.
And that cast of characters that Max has supporting him is, very, very important to the mission that he has kind of dedicated his life to. And kind of in the same vein, thinking about the supporting characters, or in some cases, and I'm thinking of Alex in with Kolya. She is this really like whip smart attorney in imminent risk. We find her, she's woken up in the middle of the night from a friend who she hasn't heard from in a few years, needs her help because child services is involved. And it just grows into this really big, like you don't see it coming, into how big this, one event with CPS is how it grows. So, Sandy, when you were kind of developing this particular storyline, can you talk about the relationship that Kolya and Alex have? Because I just love how they work together, both on their own and when they are actually teaming up to support one another.
Well, I find it's an interesting dynamic, and because there's in Imminent Risk, there's actually they actually are sort of a little bit at odds, because there's times when this is one of the times when her duties as a lawyer actually are conflicting with his role as an intelligence officer to try to stop what he believes is a horrific terror attack. And yet you as a lawyer, you have obligations to your client that she has to follow. But for the most part, what they like about each other is they like each other's intelligence, they like each other's integrity, but there are times when there's a bit of a clash. And what they have to work through in Imminent Risk is it going to work in the long term? Imminent Risk starts, they're 3 weeks from actually finally getting married. They've been engaged since my first book, when they both got kidnapped, and they're finally just about to get married, and she gets pulled into this child protection case. And I chose it, by the way, I did those kind of cases when I was working as a lawyer. And so that, and I saw some of them were, I think some of the children were wrongfully taken, and it was very, very traumatic for these children. So I thought I would like that as a theme for the book.
And well, that's some pretty heavy stuff. And I just want to take a second to say thank you for spending, so much of your legal career, in that field, because that is a tough field. I work for my day job in behavioral health, and I know how difficult that can be. So thank you for doing that. But I kind of want to turn to Dr. M. Your turn now. You have kind of another side of the coin character, also a rakish fellow, Jean-Paul. Can you tell us a little bit about him and how he gets involved in all of this stuff?
Well, he's actually the person who really trained Lily Robinson in this art of deception. And you find out, actually, when you read the series, it's the last book is both a finale as well as a prequel, because you find out how Jean-Paul, or JP, got into it, and then how he was set up to partner with Lily Robinson. And he knows the moves, but what they want from her is to be able to eliminate people so it looks more like a natural death. And that's where she comes in. So yes, he can pull out his gun and, they can off someone, but the whole idea is no drones, no guns, no big shows, just make it quiet. And so Lily Robinson not only learns from him the craft, but they become lovers. And that's their relationship grows as you read the books. So kind of interesting. But actually, my favorite character in the book is actually Dr. John Chi Lee, who is the clinical chemist who Lily knows, who's a very mysterious chemist from Hong Kong, and who's actually based on a Hong Kong chemist that I know. So I kind of love that character.
Well, I mean, he was the one that he was tasked with. I don't hope this isn't too spoilery, but he was tasked with killing Lily at some point, and then he was like, wait, actually, I don't want to do that, and he then becomes friends with her. I was like, I love that.
Yes, that's right. So in the original short stories that were written for the journal, Dr. Lee was originally, as you say, tasked with killing Lily Robinson, but then he had such an appreciation for her knowledge about poisons and what she was doing that he changed sides. So it was kind of it's an interesting story, and there's more to it as you get along in the books to find out what their relationship is that goes way back that neither of them were quite aware of.
Oh, and I find that the fact that he had such respect for her, and then he's like, you know what, you can't take away this mind from the world. And it's like, what an interesting honor system that these spies have. Before we continue with our discussion, everyone, I do want to turn to our wonderful folks that are joining us live here this evening during our chat. We have Regina saying good evening, everyone. So good to see you, JC. And yes, Regina, I did get my haircut. Thank you for noticing. We have a good Wednesday evening to you all from Farmhouse Reader. We have Susan Worrell saying good evening, all. Alma Collins saying hello, everyone from Arkansas. DHB saying happy Wednesday. We've got Alma saying, I just received the paperback of the Not So Merry Adventures of Max Creed yesterday. I can't wait to get into it. And Regina says, thrillers can be a very heavy subject given the subject matter. And this turns into a question. Love it. How do you each decompress or keep yourselves from getting lost in the plot? And that is such an astute question to ask, because each of your characters all have really either traumatic backstories that they're dealing with. Lily Robinson, she lost her daughter in this like horrible expedition accident. We have Max losing his bride. Both Alex and Kolya have, terrible things that have happened to them over the course of their careers. How do you guys get in that headspace for your writing? And Sandy, we'll start with you. What's your process to get into that darker headspace, and how do you pull yourself out of it?
Well, to get into it, I usually wind up rereading older material to try to get into the world and get into the mind of Kolya and Alex. And so I'll reread some of the things I've written before about them. And Kolya's actually background is doubly he was orphaned at 9 years old, and he spent 4 years in an abusive Russian boys' home before he was adopted by an American cousin. And then in the first book in the series, he's winds up being kidnapped and tortured after being set up by his own agency in a misinformation scheme. And I chose not to have him bounce back immediately, because most people don't. And he actually winds up dealing with PTSD and the physical injuries through the rest of the series. But how I get out of it, I read cozies.
Yes. That is,
I mean, I read, actually, I have very eclectic reading. I read cozies, I read fantasy. I'm a big, I read all sorts of things, but, I love spy books. I love thrillers. But if I want to, pull up my mood, I sometimes step outside the genre.
good palate cleansers there.
Yeah.
Dr. M, what's your process for when you have to go dark? How do you pull yourself out of it?
Well, I think all of the characters that we kind of write have all these traumatic backgrounds, and that's what you do for a good thriller. You've got to give something to motivate them. What is it that drives them? In Lily's case, as you mentioned, she loses her daughter on this expedition. She's guilty about it. And what she does is she's a physician by day, if you will. And the cases, by the way, that I write in my book that are Lily's cases at the hospital are real cases that I've had. Obviously, things are changed to be HIPAA compliant, but they are real cases. And then she's easily recruited by the government because she is so guilty about what's happened to her daughter. So she becomes an easy mark. So I had to sort of give that as a background. And for me, like Sandy, it's not just the reading of other books that can take you out of it and give you something else, but having a romance novel come out this summer that I wrote, completely different genre.
Wow.
And no one dies by poison. No one's killed. There is some traumatic things, but it's a happily ever after at the end. So what's better than that?
Oh, that's fabulous.
Yeah.
Oh,
Nothing is better than that, by the way.
Matt, what
How
about you?
Matt?
What's your strategy for kind of pulling yourself out of the darkness?
Well, the darkness is all around us in the news these days. And that's probably one of the reasons why I created this anti-hero, Max Creed, who's willing to bend the rules to achieve justice, because sometimes justice cannot be realized through the normal court systems or the regular channels, if you will. So really, it's a healing process for me to be able to write these stories where Max Creed is going out and changing the world and making a difference, even if sometimes, very bad means are used to achieve those. And that's something that he has to flirt with a lot and walk a very careful line with because he has his own demons. But through the course of, I've written 3 books now. This first one was out last year. The second one is out imminently. And the third book will be out next May, and it's with the publisher. So over the course of these 3 books, we're going to start the healing process for him as well as a character. But each story is a healing process for me as the villains get their comeuppance, so that helps. And I think
So,
all 3 of us write these thrillers, which is different than mysteries in the fact that in a mystery, you're trying to solve a crime. But all 3 of our series, we're really trying to stop catastrophe from happening on
Mhm.
a really worldwide scale. So
Right.
it's nice to achieve that.
well, and that actually, thank you for that because you set up my next question perfectly. I'm a fan of thrillers. My dad was a huge fan of thrillers. I love, I'm not going to go into all the thriller authors, but I've got to mention John le Carre, for example. But so one of the things that always amazes me with the folks like you yourselves who write thrillers, is so much of the, I guess, the reality of the world, um, like in real places, like London or Washington, D.C. or New York City. Sarah and I, we have our cute little fake little towns and we just kind of make everything up and it's kind of fun. And yeah, somebody ends up dead, but it's not that, there's not a lot of research into it. Let's be honest. But the 3 of you, not only with, for example, Dr. M, with you, with your poisons, there's a lot of kind of factual stuff in the background, I guess. So Dr. M, I'll start with you. What kind of research do you have to do or have you had to do in order to help make your books seem real to the reader?
Okay. Um, for most of the books, I've been to most of the cities that I write about or countries that I write about, not all of them, but many of them. So I have a feel for what the culture is like, and they're global, as you know. Each book takes place in different parts of the world. That's part one. And so I have that sense of being there, what it feels like. I can incorporate that. With respect to the poisons, that's my day job. So yes, I might have to refresh a little. Which poison do I think would work well? How does the laboratory work? All the clinical cases, many of those just come from the regular job that I do or did every single day. So for me, it's fun kind of going back and reviewing those methods or the different types of poisons I want to apply. But a lot of it is just, like I say, kind of here, with that. Um, but I do love the research. I have to say, I'm one of those people who can absolutely get lost in the research rabbit hole. I love it down there. I wrote textbooks before I wrote novels, and that's what we do. We research and we review and we write little tiny details. So I love that spot.
How about you,
Yeah.
Sandy?
Well, I have to admit I have not been a lot of the places that I have placed my books, but I do a lot of research about locations. I there's there's Google Maps and you can go on. What's online now is amazing in terms of being able to see neighborhoods, etc. But you can also, usually will buy 3 or 4 country guides to, for example, in Bloody Soil took place in Germany. I got a book on, the fact of what kind of breakfast Germans eat, and the fact that they like to do nude sunbathing, all the little details that about the country that you wouldn't know as an American. And I have had actually German readers tell me that they thought I had been there, and which made me very pleased. I also had to do a lot of research on weapons. For my first book, Trojan Horse, I took a gun class for 3 days. I went in and learned how to fire a gun. I'd written about how Kolya was using his gun wrong, and I had to go back and rewrite it. So I've have some familiarity now with weapons. That helps. A lot of the other stuff is stuff, the legal part. I am an attorney, so Alex and Kolya actually has a law degree, even though he hates practicing the law, like most lawyers. That's basically where I get most of my background.
And how about you, Max? Matt for Max.
Matt. I could be either. Max Creed is new territory for me for sure, because, I've written some historicals, and what I really enjoyed was visiting the places like Cuba or the Civil War battlefields, or New Orleans, to, really gain a deeper understanding of those places. And then I have some mysteries that are set in Maine about places that I know very well. And, so there might be a little more research, because I usually try and learn something as I go, and, have a topic that is new and exciting, and that not only will I come to learn, but hopefully pass on to the reader as I go. But with Max Creed, I had to step back and say to myself, what do billionaires do that the rest of us can't do? And so therefore, I wasn't really able to do these things, because I'm almost a billionaire, but not quite. I'm approaching it with book sales. They're pretty crazy. But so a lot of that was, first imagining what, they might do, and the new one, Everything versus Max Creed. Max Creed's sort of idea is to befriend these villains and then tear them down from the inside out. And so he's markets himself as this billionaire playboy who is morally corrupt, and becomes friends with these people and travels and does all of these exotic things. So in Everything versus Max Creed, he goes out and immediately, it goes surfing in Malibu off the cliffs. And then, later on, they do an underground midnight car race that, millions of dollars are on the line. Or they go lion hunting in South Africa and do all of these different things and these are just short plane trips away. So, it's just amazing. You get on these private jets, and you eat dinner, and you go to bed, and you wake up, and you're there. So I had to do a lot of imagining, and then a lot of online research to really understand that. So if anybody knows any billionaires that would like to chat with me, that would be helpful.
I can't help wondering if there's some way we could get you in touch with Raymond Reddington from The Blacklist. It seems like he might be a good resource for you.
Yes, Reddington would be perfect.
So before we talk about kind of your antagonists, or these like modern groups, weapons, and biohazards, all of this good stuff that we get to dive into, I do want to let our audience members know that you all have generously offered a fun giveaway prize for the evening, where you will be giving away a copy of one of your fabulous books. Folks, if you would like to enter in, so this is for the chance to win 3 books. So this is a big one.
It's 3, not just
3.
1, 3.
3. You know what to do. Email giveaways@itsbookishtime.com. Just email me. You don't have to put anything in the email. Just let me know that you want to be entered into the giveaway. And it is US only because we are mailing out physical books. So if you're one of our US viewers and would like to be entered into the giveaway, please go ahead and do so. We'll keep it open for 24 hours, and then we'll select a winner. So I'll remind you at the end as well.
Hey,
So
Sarah,
talking,
Sarah, before we move on, I
Mhm.
think we ought to mention the titles of each of those books. That would be fun.
Yes, of course. Yes. So our let's have, because some folks are giving away newer books and older books in their list. So Dr. M, your book that you are giving away is The Queen of Poisons, which is right behind. We can see a little bit of your beautiful cover with those
The
gorgeous
Queen of All
flowers.
Poisons, yes.
Queen of All Poisons.
Yes.
And then Matt, we have you doing book 1 of Max Creed, correct?
Yeah, so it's the Not So Merry Adventures of Max Creed, but if the person who just received it in the email were to win, they could certainly go to my website and I could give them any of my other books, or very soon the second book in that series. If they would prefer to ask you for that, I can accommodate that.
Perfect. And then Sandy, we have Imminent Risk, which is
Right.
the book that we've been chatting about this evening. Okay, so the thing that I am most excited to talk to you guys about are these concepts that you have come up with about these global issues that feel like, why haven't they happened? Because they seem so like there was one, Dr. M, that you mentioned where this terror group had done had inserted ricin into scratch and sniff like lottery cards to try and like do like a mass terror attack. In Sandy, in your book, we're dealing with this kind of radicalized group of people who believe that there's a secret government, or there's a secret organization that's taken over the government, that happened during when the US went off the gold standard, and that aliens are involved. That part is, I don't believe the aliens are involved, but I definitely believe that there are people out there that would believe that. And then Matt, we have this platform, Everything, that you've created, which is like social media all wrapped up into one, that begins to learn behaviors and patterns of the people using it, and therefore are manipulating them. These ideas are super scary, but they also feel really real and something that could happen in the world. How did these first come to mind? And Dr. M, let's start with you for this one. How did these like mass poisons that are, oh my gosh, it's terrifying to think about, because I think about the anthrax scare that happened, which honestly, I don't even know what it was about, because I just remember anthrax was an issue in the mail. Where did this idea of like a missile transporting a poison rather than an explosion come from?
Right. Well, I mean, I get a lot of things, as everyone else said, from the news, what's going on. You just keep your ear to the ground, or what I would hear during work about certain things. We know certain governments have used poisons to on their people in general as a mass poisoning. We also know that certain countries, particularly, are fond, I won't even say which country, are fond of poisons. But if you go to my poison blog, you can read about those real life things. So for me, I kind of agree with you, Sarah, that those are really scary, because those are things that can really happen. So the idea that you probably, we've all gotten in the mail what we call these scratch and sniff cards. You know how you get perfume cards and some of them are in the sealed plastic? Well, what if instead of perfume, that was an inhalable poison? You could see how that could really disrupt society. And that's what you want to do in my books. It's the chaos that it would cause, the disruption in the society that would allow terrorist organizations to move in. With respect to missiles, we know missiles now can be fired from certain countries, but what if the missile could be fired that could go low enough to avoid radar and far enough to get into the central part of the United States, not just the coasts? That technology is out there, and I talk about that technology. In the third book, as an example, a bit before you even heard of this, I talked about rare earth metals and why they're so important and why there's a land grab for that. And then the next thing you know, we started hearing about this in the news, and everybody was talking about rare earth metals. So there are things that you know that could happen that could really affect society. And you write about those scary things. Those are the things that keep me awake at night.
Oh gosh. Well, now they're definitely gonna keep me awake at night, because that idea of receiving something in the mail and just like, willy-nilly scratching, and like, it's to know that I don't know what's stopping people from doing that. And that's what's the scary part. Like, I know that in these books, we have all of these amazing agencies that are working together to prevent this from happening. And it's like, I hope that that's really going on in the background. And
Well,
Sandy
Sarah,
kind of,
Sarah,
go ahead, Jim.
I'm just going to jump in, and Sarah, you're too young to remember this, but the Tylenol scare,
Yeah.
back in I think that was in the 70s. It was just like, talking about chaos. That was just like, it was like nobody knew what to do.
Right. And I actually have a poison blog on that. And that's that is why now today, all our medications that you can buy over the counter are in sealed safety caps. We didn't have that before. Now we do.
The Tylenol case is actually something from I am a huge true crime junkie. And that's something that has been talked about on the many podcasts that I've listened to. But the one that always kind of shocks me is, even after they introduced all of these new safety measures, there was still like tampering that happened, and that never got solved. And so it's very interesting to see like how much of trust that we put into basically everything of our lives. And so Sandy, talking about this fake terrorist group, the American Gold Posse, tell us a little bit about their origins in the book, and like how you came up with this as your group that is being monitored by Kolya and his agency.
Well, it's based on a sovereign nation. There are sovereign nation groups out there that actually believe the United States has no jurisdiction over them. They're living in the United States, but they believe that the United States, when it went off the gold standard, was taken over by a global cabal. And some of them actually do believe it's aliens. And I hate to say it, anytime you have conspiracy theories, you get Jews tossed in there, as the Jews are in there with the lizards, which, of course, Kolya, who's Jewish, is winds up getting targeted by. But I came up with it because the antagonist in that book was again someone who had been his own agency had sacrificed him to keep so that someone that was on the inside in a terror group would be able to be considered legitimate. So they let him be shot to keep their agent in place. And so he turned and he found evidence of this was all make believe, but I had people think it was real. That there was secret excuse me a sec. It's not anthrax. That there are secret bunkers around the country that where the U.S. government had hidden weapons in case of a Soviet takeover. And that was based on the fact that under the Brooklyn Bridge, about 10 years ago, they found a secret bomb shelter that still had food and supplies. And I thought, well, what if they had weapons? And so it took off from there.
Oh, wow. What if they had weapons? That is a, when I think about the questions that authors ask themselves, for myself, I often say like, oh, that'd be a great place to kill somebody, in like a cute way. But what if it had weapons? That's another thing to add to the list for thriller writers. Matt, tell us a little bit about Everything and how it is how AI and just the online technical world, how it becomes a problem for Max and his not so merry band of followers.
Well, we all have stories to share of, you bring up that you're looking for a vacuum cleaner, and the next thing you know, you're getting besieged with vacuum cleaner advertisements on Facebook and other places like that. I think everybody has a story like that because they're listening, and somebody's listening and amassing that data and then dispersing it to the right people. And they're really able to influence buyers' decisions. And I decided to take this up a notch a little bit. And the richest man in the world, who owns this social media site called Everything, where everything is allowed, and it, is causing some discontent and problems in the world. And he also owns an internet search engine and a cell phone company. And between the three of these, he comes up with a algorithm that he calls triangulation. And he's able to not only influence buying decisions, but he's able to trigger people to do things that he wants because he knows more about all of us than we know about ourselves. So he's able to influence more than buying decisions, but dictate behavioral problems and maybe set people off on a task of killing somebody or robbing somebody or blowing something up. And as Sandy talks about people that believe in aliens and whatnot, and all these different things. I think that it really is a possibility to develop an algorithm like that. I know in my first book, it's about a morally corrupt politician who is incredibly wealthy and rotten to the core and decides to run for president. And unfortunately, we didn't have Max Creed at that point. But maybe in the second book, Max Creed will, spring up and find some justice and stop this really just furthering of people being, getting all of their information through social media and things like that, and be able to do something about it. But it helps me have Max Creed on the pages to stop these things from happening. But we might need somebody in real life to do it.
I know, because
Well,
we
and
have just real quick, Jim. We got a comment in the chat from Regina saying it seems more and more fact is not stranger than or more fact is stranger than fiction. As I listen to the plots of these thrillers, I feel like I can see it happening. So it just in the world that we live in, how terrifying is it that what you're writing feels so real? Great point, Regina.
I just have to tell you that my third book in the series, Bloody Soil, was about an attempted coup in the German government, where they stormed the Reichstag, killed the prime minister, and installed their own person as a prime minister. The week after it came out, the German government arrested like 24 people who were planning to storm the Reichstag, kill the prime minister, and install their own person as the prime minister. And I thought, oh my God, at least, I hope they didn't get it from me.
They might have been like, "Hey, we better look into this," and then
Yeah, it had been.
you just saved
save
the world.
They had been investigating them for years. Apparently, I just happened that I came out with the same idea about a week before it actually happened.
well, and that makes me wonder. we've talked about your heroes and their I don't want to say sidekicks, they're partners in their stories. And but one of the other things that in talking about the bad stuff happening in your stories is that as you all know, because you write these amazing thrillers, that your bad guys have to be more than just evil. To have the compelling character, yeah, they're doing some scary thing, but they think they're the hero of their own story. So could you talk about maybe what your thought process is when you're creating these bad guys or these evil cabals, how you get them to that point where they're more than just I'm a crazy mad billionaire and I'm going to take over the world and own it for myself and all that kind of stuff. So how about Matt, how about you go first on that?
I had a professional editor once that told me often that something was just unbelievable in my books. And I would often say, but that part of the book is true. That really happened. And he would say, well, still the reader's not going to believe it. You can't include that. But I think that's sort of changed over time to being able to believe that people will do what they will do. And as I said earlier, Max Creed befriends these different people, and they're incredibly charismatic and do really fun things. You know, in the first book, it's a little more sinful things, and he's being tempted by, gambling and sex and booze and things like that, that he's trying to turn the page on. But in this next book, it's, some of these really exciting things that he's going along and doing, and the person's entertaining and they're smart and they're witty. And, there's somebody that you might like if you met them. Not that you'd ever meet them because they don't shop in the same grocery stores that we do. But if somehow you got onto, the billionaire island and met some of these people, you might be swayed by their charisma. And it takes a little while to realize the rottenness at their core that they are having.
Dr. M, what's your take on the bad guys being the heroes of their own stories?
In the first three books of the Dr. Lily Robinson series, we're really pitted against a renegade Russian terrorist group, where they really want to destabilize the United States. And they do a pretty good job of it in the first few books. And in the second book, actually, they're working with the North Koreans. So you can understand how with the current politics, where I would get that from and why I would sort of pit my characters against that, trying to stop their global threats. And in the last book, however, something a little bit different, where it's more of a personal revenge story. And so my character there, that's my antagonist in that book, is really, again, it almost comes out of more of a personal thing rather than a terrorist organization. But I like to deal with, current topics. And that one, I talk a lot about climate change, murders, suspicious deaths of climate scientists who are working on the, different aspects of the ocean warming and that sort of thing, coral reefs dying. In the second one, I talk more about, I mentioned the rare earth elements and why not these countries vying for new grounds where they can get these. That makes a terrific a setup there. So my terrorists kind of come from, antagonists all kind of come from those different spots, if you will.
And Sandy.
Well, I think the way I do it is to try to get inside what makes the person tick. I mean, why are they doing this? In the last book, Imminent Risk, the guy is a patriot. The antagonist is a patriot. He was a CIA operative who was in fact badly treated by our government, who has reason to be suspicious of our government. And he actually I mean, the fact that he goes off on a weird direction and imagines alien lizards taking over the government doesn't doesn't destroy the fact that he actually has a real story that gets him sympathy. That in fact gets him sympathy from Kolya at one point. But the other thing is that the antagonists, you want to have the antagonists who are people. They have someone they're fond of. They're things they're fond of doing. They're, you have to make them well round, and they're not just, sitting there cackling and um, it, it's in my third book in Bloody Soil, which I mentioned earlier, the antagonist is a Nazi, and yet you could see he's deeply in love with this young woman who turns out to be a Nazi hunter. And so you can see, but you can see how much he cares for her, and that humanizes him. He's not enough that you're terribly torn up when he gets killed. Not to be a spoiler, but you as you said, the villain is the hero of their own story. They usually have a rationale for what they're doing. In my first book, the Romanian villain thinks he's making his country a better, stronger place and resents the US influence over his country. And it sort of makes sense within his world.
That's, yeah, the Sandy in Imminent Risk kind of getting into Victor's head a little bit, where he believes that these people are aliens. Like that was the thing that was he's like, oh, like those guys could be like, they might be aliens, and he's like completely serious and straightforward. And so like understanding like, oh, there's something going on here, it just adds like another layer to the complexity. We have another comment from Regina that says, this conversation is making me want to go back and watch 7 Days in May or The Manchurian Candidate, the original. And that is a great segue to kind of our final question before we begin to wrap up for the evening. Who are your thriller inspirations, whether it be other authors, movies that have kind of woven their way into your world? What are some inspirations that folks should be like, that they should be on the lookout for? And Matt, we'll start with you.
I've had a lot of mystery influences, but as I've segued over into thrillers, I've been reading some really great books, such as Greg Hurwitz and the Orphan X series about the Nowhere Man. I've been enjoying those a lot, who's a character very similar to Max Creed, who operates alone instead of with a cast of characters. Another one is a very wealthy person, Win Lockwood, in the Harlan Coben series about Win. And I don't know, I guess on TV, I've been watching Homeland lately, which is a fantastic series. It's so twisting and just keeps you on the edge of your seat and kind of teaches you a lot about how to just propel a story forward and keep things moving and keep you off balance, which I think is important for a thriller writer. So those would be my latest influences.
Awesome. Sandy, what about you?
Well, I just want to say my foundational influence was The Man from U.N.C.L.E., which I grew up with. But more seriously, Le Carre's novels were just fabulous. And then I also like Daniel Silva. He has a protagonist who I think of as very similar to Kolya, who also suffered trauma and has to deal with various spy aspects. And then my current thing is McHarren. I don't know if you've read the Slow Horse series. I just love that series.
Yeah, people who watch the show know I'm a huge fan of that series. So, but enough about me. Dr. M, how about you?
I would have to say that my biggest influence was Michael Crichton, because he was able to take any subject. He didn't just have a series, but really any subject. And when he wrote about it, and it clearly was a novel. He incorporated so much terrific research. You always came away learning something. And I kind of hope that if you read my books, you learn a little bit about doing an autopsy. You learn a little bit about cases, toxicology cases or something like that. But I loved all his books, and yeah, terrific. Right now, I'm got this thing about Michael Connelly's books. So I'm currently reading The Law of Innocence. I read The Proving Ground last month, and I'm totally into the series on Netflix. And I heard they're renewing for another, and I just love the series.
Oh,
It's a legal thing, Sandy, so I don't know if they're doing it right or wrong, but it's okay with me. It's exciting.
Ooh, those are I love getting recommendations, and that's what we love to do as we wrap up the show. Are there so what else is bringing you currently joy, whether it's a podcast, audiobook, book, TV show, movie, anything else that you guys would like to recommend to our wonderful audience members?
Well, I guess I'd have to add the influences of Dr. BJ Magnani and S. Lee Manning as good influences on my thriller writing. They're all wonderful books that they write. I'm currently listening to At Midnight Comes the Cry by Julia Spencer Fleming, which is a very, very good audiobook. And I'm reading Those Who Choose Evil by Kate Flora, and that's another fantastic book. So that's kind of some of the things I'm doing now.
That last one sounds very very interesting, especially in lieu of our conversation that we had last week, Matt, about like, would we be good billionaires? And I'd like to think that I would, but who knows? Any final thoughts? This has been fascinating. Thank you all for sharing your time with us this evening, learning about your incredible books, and being able to kind of get inside your mind, how you come up with these. So for our wonderful viewers, make sure we have Dr. BJ Magnani, who newest book out is The Power of Poison.
No. That's the second book in the series, The Power of Poison.
Gotcha. Which
there are four books.
Four books. Oh my gosh.
The first book is The Queen of All Poisons. The second is The Power of Poison. The third is A Message in Poison. And the fourth is We'll Always Have Poison.
Oh, those are great titles.
Okay. Yes. And so folks, just make it easy. Just buy all four of them. And so you can just binge them.
It's one story.
Netflix. Yeah. Just, binge reading all weekend. So there you go. There's your assignment. After you, and Sandy, how about you?
Well, my latest book is Imminent Risk, and it is the last in four. Trojan Horse, Nerve Attack, and Bloody Soil are the first three. And all of my books can be read as standalones, or you can read them in order, which I highly recommend. Get all four.
Yes.
Okay. So that's for next weekend. Then after you've read Dr. M's, then you're going to read Sandy's, and then you're going to finish off with Matt, who has a lot more than just Max Creed. But Matt, you want to give us the titles of the Max Creed books?
So the first book is The Not So Merry Adventures of Max Creed. And the book that is coming out imminently, not imminent risk, but imminently, is Everything versus Max Creed, which should be out in the next week or so.
Which is perfect for the following weekend of everybody's reading binge. Of course, there will be one lucky viewer tonight who receives a copy of 3 of your wonderful books that you guys have generously donated for a giveaway. Folks, remember, you can email giveaways@itsbookishtime.com. Or if you can't remember that particular email, you can email me directly. You can send me a DM. However, just let me know that you want to be entered into the giveaway, and we'll get you in there for our U.S. residents only. Again, thank you all for being here this evening. This was fabulous. Thank you for sharing your time, your knowledge with us. This was so enlightening. terrifying but fun. And isn't that the how it goes these days? But brilliant writing, edge of your seat, so many great concepts and so many fascinating ways that people can do harmful things to one another. So let's hope that it all stays fictional. But again, thank you all for being here. It was wonderful having you on the show. To our wonderful viewers who joined us here live, thank you for being here with us. We really, really appreciate you taking an hour out of your day to spend with us. We will be back with a new show tomorrow afternoon. We're going to be joined by cozy mystery author Marla Cooper and talking about her new cozy mystery series. So it'll be light and fun for rounding out our week. But as always, thank you for being here, everybody, and stay bookish. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.